Hello, welcome back to Harp Tuesday. It's Tuesday, June 14th, 2011. And on this episode, I'm going to be talking about glissandos, or glisses. Now, glisses, of course, are such a typical harp sound. And you'll hear them all over the place in orchestral music. On TV, somebody jumps, that type of thing. And they're not actually that hard to play compared to a lot of things. They can sound quite impressive, something like that, but that's actually really easy to play compared to doing a bunch of arpeggios or something to get sort of a similar effect. So they're great because they can sound impressive, but they're actually not that hard to do. And I had a viewer suggest wondering about how to do two-handed glisses. So I thought I'd do a whole episode on glisses, and there's actually a fair amount to talk about. So let's start with just the basics. I'm just going to adjust this camera angle a tiny bit. So let's set this back to just C flat, I think. To start with, let's say you're just going to do a gliss in one direction, so up to start with, and often it will be written with a starting note, say this C, and maybe an ending note, say this C. So here's your distance that you're glissing. You use your first finger, you position it on the string at a somewhat, like here you are ready to play, so now we're flattening it out a little bit. Instead of being sort of almost up and down a little bit with this part of the finger, we're pointing sort of out here at an angle. And the other fingers are just nice and loosely curved. And we're just going to pull up. So the finger is not doing anything. The finger is just staying in place. It's the arm that's moving up. And this is a great spot to remember to shift your elbow up as you go up, to not let the elbow drop down, but to make sure that the elbow stays up so that it's all staying on a somewhat similar plane. Now at the very end, I don't know how well this is showing up in the video, but I'm coming up and I'm coming to this final note, and I end up sort of sliding onto it and then playing it. That's slightly safer than just glissing all the way up and trying to stop on that last note. And it also provides perhaps a little bit more definition on that ending note. So that's the trickiest thing about an upwards gliss, is just if you're trying, sometimes of course you will maybe place the thumb so that you can go. That of course is a really easy, safe way to do it if you want to make that top note heard. Like sometimes, say in particular, perhaps in some orchestral pieces, but sometimes you just want to create this sort of effect where it's not particularly important where it starts and where it stops. But oftentimes you will want to hear that ending note. So a really easy and safe way to do that is to go ahead and place it before you even start glissing with the left hand, with the thumb, so that you can just gliss right into it. And that way you know that you're gonna, you're not gonna grab the D or the B by mistake. But it's also good to practice being able to grab it with two as well. So that is an upwards gliss. Now, going down, use the thumb, position it as if you, again, as if you were going to play, but maybe flattened out a little bit so that it's just, again, the finger or the thumb are just sort of staying in position. So they want to be in a fairly comfortable, firm position where you can, again, just use the arm motion to... And you'll notice there how my hand is just staying in the same shape, and it's my forearm that's moving and creating this sound. So it can take a little bit of practice just to make sure that you're getting an even gliss, that's not... that it's all... But it's you know, it's not too difficult. So then let's look at something a little trickier, and that's merging two glisses together. So in this case, let's start going up and then come down. So we start up, and what we want to make sure that happens is to have little or no gap between the top, between the change round of going up and then going down. So obviously, there's this space between the fingers. You know, we're glissing up, and the thumb, if it grabs this note up here, you know, we finish here, and then there's this gap in space, and there can also be a gap in time between when we start going down again. Here we go. Which is not ideal. So what you want to think of is sort of that is, as you come up, your hand angle is going to change so that the fingers are going down, the thumb is coming up, so we're decreasing this span, and so that it's kind of like the finger is sweeping under and the thumb is coming over a little bit, so that we get... And there will obviously be a gap in terms of notes. You know, you're maybe going to finish glissing here and then start here. But what you want to do is eliminate that gap in time so there's a smooth transition. And on those final notes, you can sort of start to sweep the finger in to get it closer to the thumb. And then coming down, we sort of do the same thing. We get ready with the finger as we're coming down and try to start it as we're finishing with the thumb. So that's something to play around with, that being able to have a smooth transition with one hand. Obviously, you go. You know, you can do it with two hands very easily, but with one hand to try to have that smooth transition between glissing with the finger and the thumb. So that's something definitely to practice. Now, that sort of covers the majority of glisses that you'll usually find in orchestral music and in a lot of pieces. Let's start and look at some of the sort of more unusual types of glisses. And in particular, Salcedo was a composer who liked to utilize some of the more out-of-the-way glisses. So this piece of his, Song in the Night, has a number of different glisses. Let me just talk about some of them. Starts out with, for example, these near the soundboard glisses, where it's just a normal gliss, but you're near the soundboard, so that instead of, you get... So there you're just changing the position on the string, and it's just like playing, or... you're getting a slightly different sound. But then we have these two-fingered glisses, and they're a little different. So these two-fingered glisses are played using 2 and 3 with the right hand. And what you're trying to do is to play thirds going up. So what you want to create is a hand shape, a hand angle that can hold these thirds. So you may need to sort of crook your first finger, crook 2 down a little bit instead of being like this, angle a little bit like that. 3 out. It may be that you can just go like this, something that's comfortable. Again, I don't know how well this is showing up on the video. Something that's comfortable and lets you So again, I would play around with either something like this or something like this. So this or this, and seeing which feels best to you. And so then what you want is, and it creates an interesting effect because, of course, as we gliss up with this finger, this 3 is coming along and dampening those notes that have just been played. So it's a different sound than a normal gliss where the strings just keep on ringing. So again, that takes a little bit of practice. But it's just a matter of finding that shape that's comfortable and you can hold, and then just pulling your arm up. Then he also uses multiple fingers for downward glisses. And of course you could do the thing about going down is, going up we have these 2 fingers, going down we just have the thumb. So how do we add extra fingers? So you can add extra fingers by using the fingernails. So for example, you can do an all fingernail downward gliss, and again in Song in the Night there's a number of these downward glisses with 4, 3, and 2. And in Song in the Night, at least, the chord that is being glissed is, a third with a second underneath. So this shape, this shape with a third and a second, and you just hold that shape and move the fingers down the string, just again with your arm motion. You could do the thumb and the fingernail of number 2 of the first finger. Of course, the thumb's going to sort of dominate there because it can be a lot louder than this fingernail sound. So that's another type of gliss that happens. And then we get some of these really fast glisses. We've got these great what is this? Whatever it is, where we're doing these downwards glisses as a really fast beat. Or something along those lines. So there you're just, again, it's just that downward motion of the arm, creating that little gliss effect. Not as much in here, but I know in his rumba and some other pieces you can do these short little glisses upwards in quick succession using 2 and 3. So, and here, unlike all these other glisses, we're using a finger closing motion. So every other time when we're glissing, the fingers aren't maybe a little bit as we turn around, but basically it's an arm motion that's creating this effect. But over a short span, you can start with the finger extended. Normally here we'd be playing, but fingers extended. So, and just close. So something like that is again another effect that can be used. What other glisses do we have? Well, basically then there's just varying the, you can play around with different speeds. And of course you can play around with both hands, like in the foray that I just finished talking about, the foray impromptu. At the end, there are these whatever the pedal setting is, but double-handed glisses where you're just using two hands at the same time. And sometimes you'll get a piece that sort of says "go nuts," essentially. They want a big, fancy gliss sound, but nothing specified. And so you can have fun, something like that where you're playing around. You can do this build up of fairly short glisses followed one after another, and again trying to make sure that there's not a gap in sound between them, and it's not, but etc. So hopefully that has been informative, and I can't think of any other particular type of gliss that comes up right at the moment anyway. But again, yeah, just most of the time, almost all the time, it's a motion of the arm and making sure that the fingers are set in whatever, for whatever type of gliss that you're doing, and just playing around with it to make sure that there's an even sound and that there's smooth turnarounds. So that's it for this week's episode. And I think actually that what I'm going to do for next episode is actually do an in-depth look at Song of the Night, because there's some goofy stuff that goes on in there that's worth taking a look at. And in the meantime, have a good 2 weeks, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Cheers.